Hey moms, welcome to the Gather Moms podcast. My name is Kate.
And I'm Rebecca. We've created this space just for you because we're both moms and we get you.
Yes, we believe there truly ain't no hood like the motherhood, and we need to be in this together. We also believe we can't mom well without Jesus, so you're going to hear us talk about him too.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Gather Moms and make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.
All right, mamas, let's jump in.
Hello and welcome to episode 28.
Okay, no, I think it's 28. It's 28. Okay, my bad.
Welcome to episode 28 of the Gather Moms podcast. We are in our season 3 all about the home, and guess what? We have another amazing guest on our show today.
The fabulous Karen Ehman is with us, and y'all, she is a New York Times best-selling author.
Say that again.
I know. Ball. And she is a speaker with Proverbs 31 Ministries. She has written so many books. I think it's like over 15 books.
It is, yes. Like you go to Amazon and there's like all these books.
And she is fantastic, you guys. We had the best conversation with her. We love her little Midwestern accent.
Yes.
It plays well off of our Texas
Shout out to Michigan.
And she has so many nuggets of wisdom, and we just absolutely loved it. This is an episode that I will want to go back and treasure and think about. What was that she said about that? It was that kind of conversation.
Lots to take away today. We know you're going to enjoy every single second. So jump in with us as we interview Karen Ehman.
Hey, Karen, we are so happy to have you on today. I saw the cover of your book come in through an email, and immediately I was like, that's us. It was the Reach Out, Gather In cover. And
Gotcha.
I knew, I said, she is one of us. That is exactly our brand. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And we knew we had to have you with us. So we are so glad to have you on today, Karen.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's great to meet you both.
Karen, I have some family from Michigan, so I am noticing your little Michigan accent there, and I love it. It makes me so happy.
Okay, I always crack up when people say I have a Michigan accent because I think people in the Midwest talk normal, and I think everyone else has an accent, but I think that's kind of the thinking of everybody. They always think somebody else has an accent.
It reminds me of my family, so it makes it feel like home, actually. It's really nice to talk. I love it.
Good.
That's awesome. I love that. So tell us, the Reach Out, Gather In is kind of how we first got connected to you. What inspired you to write that book?
Well, hospitality is a topic that I have had to learn a lot about over the last couple of decades of being a married mom. And it really was something that I set out not really knowing a lot about.
Yeah.
I didn't even barely know how to boil water when I got married, but I married into a family full of entertainers, and one owned a bed and breakfast. One did catering from her home and actually trained under Martha Stewart. And, I didn't know anything about this. I could make slice and bake cookies, but that was about it. So I really set off to try to impress my new in-laws. And God taught me a huge lesson that hospitality isn't what the world calls entertaining. Entertaining puts the emphasis on you and seeks to impress other people. Hospitality puts the emphasis on your guests and doesn't try to impress them, but tries to refresh them and make them feel welcome. So I've learned a lot about that over the last, couple of decades. And I had a lot of friends say, you should put all that information in books and include some of your recipes. And so that's exactly what I did. And it turned out to be this 40-day challenge called Reach Out, Gather In. And it's not just about opening your home, but also opening your heart wherever you are and being hospitable.
I agree. I loved it. And it felt more bite-sized, like you're talking about, because I do think that we see other people who are Martha Stewart-esque, and it feels overwhelming to think about, how do I get my house just perfect so that everyone comes in? I love what you just said, that you turn it on your head, because it's not about you, it's about them. And that is so freeing to think about.
I actually saw that as I was looking through some of your other books. I love that your focus really is on other people. How do I take what God's given me to do and make somebody else feel special? I love that about you.
Great. Yeah, it's just a way I've learned to live, because I saw my mom be like that. She was very other-centered rather than always, saying, look at me. And it makes me think of, I wish I could remember exactly where I read it, but a quote, I guess I want to say, a concept about 20 years ago really stuck with me, that there are two different kinds of people in the world: people that walk into a room and say, here I am, and people that walk into a room and say, oh, there you are.
Oh, that's really good.
Gosh, That's really
I wish I
good.
knew
love
who said
that.
it. It's not original to me, but I wish I knew who said it. It may have been Ann Landers or something. It was some write-in column in a newspaper years and years ago, but I read it and I thought, oh, I want to be oh, there you are kind of person.
Yes. And to
gosh.
teach our kids that. I love that you learned this from your mom.
Yeah.
Our kids pick up on so much stuff that we probably don't even know.
Yeah.
And then later in life, they're going to refer back and go, well, my mom used to do that, or I saw my mom do that. I love that that's a characteristic that you love and want to redo in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Someone else that was influential in this hospitality concept for you was the woman who invited you over for apple cinnamon tea, right?
Yes.
I love that story. Can you tell our mamas about that?
Sure. So I was in high school. I was, I think, 15 at the time. And my mom was a single mom doing her absolute best to raise my brother and me and doing a great job at it for being a single parent. But I was often home alone after school, and I would go out in the front yard and toss a softball up to myself because I didn't have anybody to throw the ball around with. My mom was working, my brother was working. And there was a woman who was the pastor's wife of the new pastor who just moved in across the street at this little country church on our corner out in the Midwest. And she saw me and she invited me to join the church softball team.
Awesome.
And it was through her that I heard again, because my mom had told me already, but we don't always listen to our parents. That was through her that I heard about the gospel and about Jesus. And not only did she invite me to the softball team, she invited me into her life. I started going to church and youth group there. I would hang out at her house after school and do my homework while she was mothering her two small children. And she would always feed me leftovers and apple cinnamon tea, herb tea. And you know what? Those leftovers tasted like a gourmet feast when I was in her presence because she so cared about me and my hopes and my dreams. And she would know when I was having a major, test coming up in school, and she would drop me a little note, or she would, call me and say she was praying for me. And she just invited me to kind of pull up a chair and join her in life. And it was through her that I became a Christian and saw the importance of hospitality.
I love that.
Amazing.
I love that. And I especially connected with that because that's similar to my story. So I grew up with a single mama, and my family, I did not grow up in a Christian home. And so when I was in elementary school, I made a little friend at school, and she invited me to spend the night. And I spent the night on a Saturday night, and her mom said, well, hey, we go to church on Sunday morning. And I didn't have church clothes. And, back then, that was in the
Girl,
90s.
you need a petticoat,
We
some
dressed
hose.
up, It's not like today, right?
Yeah.
And so her mom said, we're going to go to church. And I spent the night, but I didn't know anything about going to church. And they started getting dressed, and I felt, I didn't know what to wear. And so she just gave me some of Haley's clothes, and she said, you know what? These would be perfect for you. Just keep them.
That's so nice.
So then they started coming to pick me up every Sunday morning, and they brought me to church with them. And then they would take me to lunch with them after, and it became this whole experience. And I came to know Jesus at that church. And then because of that investment in me of just picking me up, making sure I felt comfortable there, they gave me my first Bible with my little Bible cover. It was like
Yes.
one of the sewn Bible covers.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And because I started going to that church and feeling involved, then my dad said, well, I can take you. My parents were divorced, but my dad felt like, if I wanted to go, he was willing to take me. So he would sit in the parking lot while I went into church.
Oh, wow.
And then after a year or so of doing that, he finally said, you know what? I guess I could go in. And finally, he started coming into church with me, and that's how he became a believer.
That's amazing.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I love stories like that. It's just amazing to me. And that woman who invited me into her home and into her life, she is still my mentor to this day. She's in her 70s,
Wow.
and we still connect all the time. I go to her with questions and problems, and she stuck to her commitment to mentor me once I became a Christian.
I love that.
It's been going on for, my goodness, almost 40 years.
I love that.
That makes me sound old. I was like 2. when
Yeah,
this happened.
of course. You were a toddler when you met her. Yeah.
Right.
I appreciate the fact that it makes us feel like motherhood it really is a tribe.
Yeah.
We're not all on our own, and your sweet mama that was a single mom had to work and things to do, but it didn't mean that another mom couldn't step into those places and welcome you into her home and take over and help.
My kids are going to need other influences,
Yes.
just like I needed. And I love that it's just kind of being aware of who God is bringing into your path and then just opening the door there. It's not something that you are necessarily having to go seek out. It's just kind of paying attention to who's out throwing a softball up in the air, out in your street, and just opening your eyes to that.
Karen, that's one of the things that you mentioned in your new book, Make Someone's Day, is that you just in the morning ask the Lord to open your eyes to someone that comes across your path that day. And that's exactly what that pastor's wife did. And that's what we could all do as moms, is not just be like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do today, but ask the Lord to open our eyes to someone in our path.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really makes life an adventure. And again, this is going to sound like a tribute podcast to my mom, but it's something that I learned from my mom, being that single mom with not such a great life. I never saw her complain. I never saw her be discontent. One time when I was in middle school and I came home upset, I think because I didn't get invited to the slumber party of the cool girls, I remember her processing it with me at the dining room table. She said something I've never forgot. She said, whenever you think life's not going your way, circumstances have got you down, you have to remember that there's always somebody out there who has life worse off than you. Yeah. So here's what you do. You go find that person and you do something to make their day. And in a strange way, it ends up making your day as well. Because you see, we do the opposite. We have our eyes, especially in today's age of social media, on all the people who seem to have life better than us, right? It seems they have a nicer and bigger house. It seems they have a better marriage. It seems they have more well-behaved children. And I like to call it coming apart at the seams, because it seems like everyone has life better than us.
That's true.
We need to get our eyes off of those people and instead look for the people who surely don't have life as good as you. So I might be complaining that my kitchen's old and outdated and small and I don't like it. Well, that's because I just saw on Instagram somebody has a brand new remodeled kitchen, right? Instead, if I'm going down to the local women's shelter and serving a meal to women who have fled their home and now have no kitchen,
yes,
guess what? All of a sudden, my kitchen's not so bad. Is it,
That's just such good truth. So good. Yes.
Yeah. So it just became a way of life that I saw my mom, who could have really been down and said, oh, poor me. I never saw one, oh, poor me come from her. And so I tried to learn to live that way, to just, every morning say, God, help me to be a notice, or tap me on the heart and show me that person who needs a smile or help financially or help, emotionally or physically. I can watch their kids' forms. They can have a break, just tap me on the heart and help me to respond. And it really does make life an adventure, and it helps you to get your eyes off yourself.
Oh, gosh, I need to listen to that 5 or 6 times and just remember, because I think sometimes I walk away from Instagram with that sinking feeling like, oh.
Yes.
But I love just changing what I'm looking at and remembering that there's always someone out there that I can help.
And what a great lesson for our kiddos, just to remind them of that too. Because obviously kids, they get caught up in their own little world, but it's my job as their mom to help them look outside of their world and see somebody else out there. That's really good.
Yeah. So Karen, this season on Gather Moms is all about home. So we're opening up the doors of our home and talking about homes. We feel like that's so important because for moms, home is often where they yield their greatest influence, right? And so we wanted to ask you a few questions about your home, if you're up for that. Okay. So tell us where you are. We've already established a little bit because of your accent, but where are you from? Where do you live, and who lives in your home?
I live in the middle of Michigan, which, we always have our map with us because we can hold our hand up and point. I live right in the middle of the palm of Michigan. And who lives in my home is my husband, who was my college sweetheart, and we've been married over 30 years.
Awesome.
And then our youngest son, who was living in Australia till the pandemic hit, he's 23. He moved home and he's renting a room from us for just a little while till he can go with plan B, which is to move out west somewhere. So he lives with us. And then also his best friend, Javari, who is a young man who has had some rough going in life, but who we have kind of adopted as our own son. And he's actually my favorite of all the kids.
I love that.
He causes me the least amount of trouble.
I love that.
But he's also living with us for a while, getting his footing and his driver's license and a job and some things that he needs to get going in life. And that's my family.
That is absolutely fantastic. Okay, before I move to my next question, how did you guys come up with the agreement that your son pays rent?
I know, I thought that was really good too. I was like, how do I get my kids to do that one day?
Oh, because I don't want my kids to grow up thinking life is just, you get everything handed to you. And so when our kids turn 18, they have the choice between working full time or going to college. And so we will allow them to live with us rent free when they're still a teenager. So until they're 19, no rent happens. But once they turn 20, they either need to be paying us rent if they're living in our house. Now, if they're off at college, they wouldn't be paying us rent. But all three of our kids have done trade school instead.
Okay.
And so they start paying us rent. Now, what the youngest one does not know, and he won't listen to this podcast, but what he does not know is the older ones. Our daughter didn't stay with us very long, but we have a daughter and then two sons. But our middle child, our first son, he rented from us till he was 22 and he bought his own house. So for 2 years, he was paying his like $300 a month, which was pretty cheap.
That's good. That's real good.
Yeah. So what our youngest doesn't know is that our two oldest who bought their first houses when they were 22 and the other one was 24, we gave them all the money back as a part of their down payment. Because we didn't need the money. We didn't need the money, but we wanted to teach them that life's not free. And they had a lot of friends. Oh my gosh. My youngest one has complained so much. He's like, well, so-and-so doesn't pay rent and he lives with his parents and he's 24 and so-and-so doesn't. I go, well, you know, your last name's not so-and-so.
That's right. So I tell my kids all the time.
Yeah. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to teach them that, you know, you don't get to just spend your money on all fun things because all these so-and-sos, they aren't paying rent and they're buying all kinds of electronics and the latest new cell phone and blowing their money on, you know, Uber Eats every night when they could easily get up and make themselves a sandwich. You know, they're blowing their money
Karen,
on all this fun stuff.
This is so good.
And so we wanted to take responsibility and all, you know, well, actually, our youngest one did thank us when he went to Australia and was living on his own. He's like, thank you for teaching me to budget money. Thank you for, you know, but what he doesn't know is that he's going to get a rebate when he buys his first house. And for both kids, it was about $5,000.
That's incredible.
Because we didn't need the money, but we needed to teach them, you don't just get everything handed to you. And I'm not like dissing on the younger generations, but a lot of people just think everything should be free. Just give me free. Just give me free. And, you know, we wanted him to have a hard work ethic. So, yep, he pays rent.
Fantastic.
That's the greatest gift you could give your kid, though. I mean, imagine that. That's just, you've taught them a lesson and they get the money back. It's like the best sale ever.
Well, and what we put was rent rebate for good behavior. So they got a rent rebate.
Well, I love that. So we have Gather 2.0 moms. So we have moms that are launching or are empty nesters. And I think so many of them, you know, as we are heading into those seasons, that will be the gold nugget that they take away from this episode is that concept. My husband and I just had dinner with a couple last night that are recently empty nesters, and they said their whole goal is for those children to not ever come back home. And that if they do, they're going to pay rent, you know, because they don't want to make it easy on them. Mm-hmm. Which is just so true. That's just such a different, I guess, you know, because you guys are kind of pioneering that empty nester in a way that was different, I feel like, when we were growing up, because people just didn't really come back home.
Right.
But now that's like a thing.
It's a thing. It is. That's so true. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, so I love that you have a new favorite kid that lives in your home. What is your favorite spot in your home?
Can I have two?
Yes.
I have two spots.
Okay.
So one of the spots is a chair that I gotta say this right, my husband's father's parents, so like his grandma and grandpa on his dad's side, got for their wedding in 28.
Wow.
It's a chair and an ottoman. It's actually a Lazy Boy brand. It's been recovered several times through the years and passed down. My husband's mom and dad had it for many years. And when his mom was put in an assisted living facility about 5 years ago, I got it. It's covered with ivory fabric. It sits in the corner of our bedroom and I call it my prayer chair. I love to just sit there in the morning and read my Bible. So that's my one favorite space. And another one that's pretty closely tied is we bought, when we moved into this house 2 years ago that we live in now, it had a big dining area and I'd never had that before. And so we bought a mid-century dining room table and chairs, which was actually cheaper than buying new, but it's from the 1950s.
Ooh.
It still had like the original tag on the bottom. And I just love to sit there and just imagine the different mamas who sat there planning their grocery list and their menu and plan and such. And then it's big enough that when everybody's home, because I have two other children who are both married. So I have a total of, 6 kids if you count Javari, which I always do. So everybody can sit around that table together. So I kind of have my private little favorite spot in my house where it's just me and the Lord, and then my spot where it's me and all the people I love.
Love that.
I love that season change. We talked about on one of our last episodes that right now formal dining rooms in our homes are not really used because we've got little kids and they're messy, and so we're eating at the bar or the kitchen table. And so I love that, to look forward to. One day I'm going to have that table and my kids are going to come home and everybody's going to sit around the table, and that's something that I can look forward to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
So we have laughed this season. Rebecca and I both have nasty kids. Karen, I'm sure your kids weren't
teenage
nasty.
boys. She said teenage boys. She knows what we're talking about.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
So then we can agree that kids are nasty.
Yeah.
How did you open your home and make it a hospitable place for others with nasty kids?
Well, at first I didn't, because I felt like everything had to be perfect. And I was waiting for the day when everything was going to be perfect. And then I realized, goodness, the older they get, they get a little neater, but now they're bigger. And so the messes kind of get bigger, and they've got lots of friends that come over and make messes. And I remember specifically one day just telling myself that I was looking at it all from the wrong perspective, that I was thinking about my perspective as a hostess, like all the things I thought were important. And we get a lot of these things, not to knock it, but from HGTV, right?
Right.
We think
Yes.
things need to be gourmet in the food department and perfect in the decor department with shiplap and all kinds of stuff. Not that I don't love me some shiplap. We just put some up in our home. But we think everything has to be like the experts do. Otherwise, we aren't going to have people over. And so I was thinking about it from the view of the hostess that wants to impress people. And I flipped that script in my mind, and I thought, well, wait a minute. When I'm a guest in someone else's house, what's important to me? Never have I thought, wow, I really hope there's gourmet food when I go visit my friend and her kids today and take my kids along for a visit. I really hope there's gourmet food. I really hope her house is big and new and beautiful, and that everything's clean and their kids are well behaved. I don't care about any of those things when I'm a guest. I think, wow, I hope when I'm there, I feel wanted. And I feel like, we have a good conversation, and I feel like, she's glad my kids are there, because my kids can be messy too, So I think if we can think more about what's important when we're a guest, it helps us stress less about being the host.
Fantastic.
Genius. It's genius. Because that's true. When I go to my friend's house and I walk away, I feel full because of my conversation and the time I spent with that person, not because I sat on like some fancy couch or her pillows all matched,
Yeah.
That's so good to think about. What do you want when you are a guest in someone else's home? And then just make that part of your routine in your own home.
Right. Put the emphasis there.
That's right. Exactly.
So one of the things we laugh about here at Gather is that we became illegal in 2020, right? Because of the pandemic. I don't know if you've seen the meme that says it's illegal, take it down with the Gather sign.
Because you can't actually gather. Social distancing.
Gotcha.
So, we've got kind of tickled at that, because that's our whole premise is get together as mobs, But that just because there's social distancing and just because there's a pandemic does not mean that we can't still gather. And we love that your book, Make Their Day, has creative ways for us to still practice that heart of hospitality and that idea of gathering, even if it's not a bunch of people in your home.
Yes. So you just have to be a little creative, and rather than complain that everything has to be done through a screen today, think, how can I bless somebody through a screen today? It's all just a different perspective.
Well, and as moms, obviously the first people we want to make their day for is our family, our kids, and maybe our spouse. What do you think are some creative ways that a mama could make her kids' day?
I think it all begins with listening. I'm not the best listener. I like to talk. My husband always teases me that, that's what first attracted him to me when we were in college, was how I could talk and work a room and make everybody feel included. And then on our honeymoon, he thought, when's she ever going to stop talking? In fact, he always teases me that if I pass away before he does, he already knows what he's going to put on my tombstone. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
A period.
What?
She's finally done talking.
She's done.
Yeah. But anyhow, I think for our kids, it really helps to be a listener. And this is another thing I saw my mom do. I've learned to call them listening for heart drops. Like when your kids are saying something without really saying it, maybe you're listening between the lines, you hear them say that they have a test next Thursday, and they don't say, and I'm really worried about it, and I think I'm going to fail, but you can just tell because you know your child so well. When they say, yeah, I have a test next Thursday in science, that they're worried about it. So set an alarm on your phone that next Thursday that you're going to, leave a little special note saying, I'm praying for you, whether you fail this test or ace it, you you're still special to me or something. And just learning to listen for those things, and also learning to praise them for things they do that maybe the world always wouldn't praise them for. Like the world would go, yay, you got an A on your spelling test on Friday. But as a mom, don't praise them because they got an A on their spelling test on Friday. Praise them because on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday, they studied for that test.
Yes.
And they only got a C+, but they studied every night. So you're praising them for their diligence, not for their worldly result of getting an A. So just really listening to your kids and trying to enter their world. That's one thing that was big when I was raising my kids when they were younger, and I'm still doing it with the 23-year-old who rents from us, is to try to enter their world. I remember my daughter loved learning about American Sign Language and communicating with people who had a hearing impairment. And so I learned sign language because that was important to her. You know, our oldest son was a baseball freak. I learned all the stats of baseball so I could have a conversation with him. Our youngest, I don't like it, but he's very into UFC fighting.
Oh, okay.
I think that's horrible. I'm like, they are hitting each other. They shouldn't be doing that. And of course, the first time he begged me to watch it with him, I sat down, I wanted to watch like this, but of course he made it very strategic that he picked the night that a couple of the guys who were fighting and who won were Christians. And so they're praising the Lord and quoting Bible verses when they're done.
Yes.
But, you know, learning about that. And so like, you know, sometimes he'll come home from work and I'm like, hey, did you see what Conor McGregor said today? And he's like, you follow Conor McGregor on Twitter? Now, I'm not endorsing Conor McGregor. I don't know anything about him other than he's a great UFC fighter who's from Ireland, I think. But just entering his world so I can converse with him, it means so much to him. One day out of the blue, he came by. I was sitting writing on my laptop in the chair out in the living room. I wanted to be out by the fire and get out of my office, change scenery a little bit. And he came by and he just patted me on the head and he goes, you're such a good mom.
Oh.
And he goes, I don't know any of my friends whose moms would follow someone on UFC that's a UFC fighter. That's cool, Mom. You're cool. You know, and I'm thinking, no, I'm just trying to talk your language, you know? And so whatever your child's interested in, learn about it, you know, enter their world. Don't always think, you know, you're trying to bring them up to the adult world. And yes, we're trying to do that as we raise our kids, but sometimes you need to just get down on their level. And, you know, for this child that loves UFC, when he was younger, it was sea turtles. He was fascinated with sea turtles. So guess what? I researched sea turtles so I could teach him about them.
Yeah.
You know, really try to enter their world. That helps them to feel like you're interested in them as a person, not just as in somebody you're trying to control and get to behave a certain way, especially when you're in public, but that you really are interested in what they're interested in.
Gosh, that's good. I can say that's true for my parents. Like when my parents will tell me they listened to an episode of the podcast or they watched a talk that I gave or something, I'm like, you did?
Yes.
You know, it gives me such a boost.
Listen, my mom listens to our podcast because she's afraid I'm going to talk about her on the podcast. So she's listening to make sure what I'm saying is the truth.
Yeah. Mama Judy will come for us.
That's right.
If we don't get it straight.
Karen, your new book, Make Their Day, is all about how people can encourage one another. And you kind of go through different categories of the people in your home, your family, your friends. I think you called it necessary people, like the mailman, the lady that cuts your hair. I love that. And so it's great ideas for mamas if they want to encourage those outside their home and inside their home. But I think sometimes as moms, we feel left out because we feel like we're the last one to get encouraged because we're so busy focusing on everybody else. Do you have any advice for the mom that maybe just feels weary today? Like, I've tried so hard to encourage everybody around me, but I just kind of feel empty myself.
First of all, I think we need to remember that we aren't doing it to get a certain result from the person that we are encouraging. I know I've fallen into that trap before, but we're doing it for an audience of one. You know, we're loving people and noticing them and trying to make their day and meet their needs because that's what God would want us to do, not because then they're going to do something back for us in return, especially even our kids. I mean, there have been times I've done something, I think that was really creative what I did for that child, and they barely grunted and told me thank you, you know. But now fast forward to where they're all in their 20s, you know, now they'll say things like, you know, that meant so much to me when you did XYZ. And I think, really? Because like you said, nothing back then. I was kind of upset about it. But, you know, they're not always the best at showing you their thanks, you know, and you read in Proverbs 31 when it says, her children rise and call her blessed. Remember when my kids were little, I'm thinking, when does that happen? Like, you know, my 4-year-old's not following me around going, oh, blessed mother. You're the one, you know, it happens later once they're
hang in there, mamas.
Yeah. And I think too, not only doing it for an audience of one, but remembering too, to take care of yourself. and not to always just be running around trying to meet everyone else's needs, but also take time for yourself. Mark 6:31 is one of my favorite verses that says this, that Jesus said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a remote place and rest for a while. For many people were coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat." Does that last sentence not sound like a mom?
Yes.
Right.
People are coming and going, I don't even have time to eat. I'm
Right.
barely eating the leftover peanut butter and jelly crust from my child's sandwich. But in the original Greek language, when it says come away by yourselves, it means by yourself and for yourself.
Wow.
So we need to have that time where we, even if it's got to be, just that 20 minutes during nap time when miraculously nobody's bothering you, or that you stay up a little later at night or get up a little early morning where it's just you and Jesus, and you can fill up so you can keep pouring out. You've got to make that a priority. And I know it's hard when you have younger kids. I remember lots of times doing my quiet time, per se, at the local McDonald's when my kids were jumping in the ball pit, because it was the only time that they would leave me alone.
Yes.
So I would take my Bible and I would sit there and read my Bible and pray while they were busy, sharing a large French fry and jumping in the balls. You've got to make time for yourself to connect with God, or you're going to get depleted.
That's a great word. That's a great word. We need that reminder.
We do.
Karen, you are so full of wisdom, and
Yes.
I cannot wait to listen back to this episode personally.
Yes.
And think about all the things that I can take away from this. And I know that our mamas on the other side of this are listening and going, oh, me too. I'm going to listen to this episode multiple times because there's so much good wisdom for us here. And we want our mamas to be able to get your books and connect with you. So tell us how they can do that.
Probably the easiest way is to go to my website, KarenEhman.com, and my last name is spelled Ehman. And there I have, everything about my books. I do have a lot of free stuff for people to download. There's some 5-day email challenges that are like devotional in nature. So it might be 5 days to watching your words, different things like that, so they can kind of test out my writing and see if it's something that they might want to, buy a book about. And then I also love to hang out on different places on social media. My favorite is Instagram, and I do a lot of giveaways over there on Instagram. So maybe I'll see them on Instagram.
Okay, good. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. We know it's going to be a blessing to our moms.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you too. Man, that was so good. I love talking to Karen. I feel like we could sit and talk with her and get so many nuggets of wisdom to take with us that are going to make such a big impact in the way we think about momming.
I think it's just so good to hear from a mom that's farther down the road than you, because they're able to help remind you of things that while you're in the middle of it, it doesn't make sense. And one of the things that I love that she talked about, she had all these memories of her mom and conversations she had with her mom. From a mom's perspective, I don't think her mom was like, woke up that morning and was like, I'm going to have a monumental conversation with my kid today.
Yeah.
It was just something that came out of, she asked a question or she had a free minute to chat with her kid. And those are the things that Karen remembers today.
Yeah.
Things her mom said, ways her mom acted. It reminds me that I don't have to make the moment with my kid perfect. Like, it doesn't have to be like, we're going to Disney World.
Yeah.
It just has to be a time where I stop what I'm doing and like lean into my kid and tell them something that's on my heart and help them work through an issue. And you never know, like 30 years later, your kid may still remember this moment with you that literally changed the way they thought about things.
Yeah. No, I think that's so good, because I think sometimes I look at my kids and I'm thinking, oh, I need to brush their hair, or have they been brushing their teeth? Or I look at outward things that I can fix, are they doing this or that wrong, right or wrong, instead of looking at them as a human being and really stopping down and listening to the things that they're saying. She talked about investing in her son and, his activities. And I'm like, it kind of was a dagger to the heart, because I was like, dang, Caleb is always trying to talk to me about Minecraft. And I'm like,
That's what I was thinking too.
Minecraft. I don't want to know about Minecraft. Don't make me do it. He's always wanted me to show me these worlds he built, and I'm like, I take a deep breath and I'm like, okay, buddy,
Yes.
And I really try and look and be like, oh, I like this here. But it's not super fun. But it was just kind of a reminder of, okay, be interested in what he's interested in. I thought that was a good thing. And the other huge for me was just walking away remembering To not have the perspective of, hey, I'm here, but yay, you're here.
Oh, that was like the best part. When you walk in a room, what's the first thing you think? Hey, everybody, I'm here.
Right.
Or looking around the room going, I'm so glad you're here.
Right. Man, I love that because it just takes the pressure off. I put so much pressure on myself of what do they think of what I'm wearing? What do they think of what I'm saying? And the way to make somebody feel special is to ask questions about them, be interested in them, and focus on them. And that applies too in our homes,
Yes.
that I love that she talked about thinking of it from the perspective of the guest. What is going to make them feel special? Is it a spotless wood floor? Or is it that you give them a big hug when they walk in the door and you look in their eyes and you ask questions about their lives,
Yes.
And for me, those concepts are so freeing and helps give me the right perspective on things.
I think that's a great challenge for us this week, that maybe we stop and look around our home and look at the people and lean into our kids and be excited about what our kids are excited about and ask questions about the things that they're interested in. But then outside of our home, to look around at some other moms and go, I want to be excited that she's here.
Yeah.
What could I do today to make her feel seen and heard and loved? And don't minimize what you could do. Like sometimes you might think writing a note or dropping a text or sending a gift card for $5 for a free latte.
Yeah.
Like that's not that big a deal. It's not going to make that big of a difference. Don't minimize
No.
the time that you spend encouraging someone else, because to them, it could be the thing they needed that day to keep going.
I cannot tell you how many times God has used you and people like that in my life that, it was just a text. It was just a Facebook message. It was, you can send $5 Starbucks gift cards to somebody, on their phone or whatever. It's just a little something to say, hey, I love you and I'm thinking about you. So for moms listening, that is your one thing today. We hope that you would take the time right now as we wrap up this episode, you would shoot a mama a text or write her a note and put it under her mat. And when you pick your kids up today and you see them, that you would look into their eyes and you would say, yay, you're here. I cannot wait.
They
to
may
hear
look
about
back at you and go, what's wrong with you, Mom?
Yeah, it's okay.
Something happened today? Be like, no, I just love you. Give them a big hug.
Wasn't that Yeti, Mom?
Seriously.
Okay, we love you, mamas. Go out and do that one thing. Love on somebody today. Make their day. And we will see you next time.
Bye, moms.